Okay, let's get started. So, hello again, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Nadav, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Namogu. Today, we'll be discussing how online brands can personalize the customer journey, despite the increase in both privacy-sensitive shoppers and stricter global data protection regulations. Essentially, not relying anymore on third-party data. Before we start, let's go over a couple of housekeeping reminders. If you have a question, please use the Q&A in the right side chat right over here. We'll try and answer as many of your questions as possible following the fireside chat with our panelists. We also collected questions during the registration process, which I'll be putting to the panelists during our conversation. Also, just so you know, this webinar is being live streamed on LinkedIn and also recorded, and you'll receive a copy of the recording by early next week. So before we get into the panel discussion, excuse me, I'm going to make the assumption that by now, we're all aware that a one-size-fits-all marketing strategy isn't effective, and treating the shoppers the same will lead to lost revenue, eroded margins, damaged brand perception. To drive the point of why personalization is of utmost importance, in our 2022 Global E-commerce Leaders Survey, published at the beginning of this year, we found that 78% of participants selected improving on-site personalization as their top priority for this year. On top of that, 79% of companies, regardless of their size, are seeking to personalize their marketing efforts in ways that don't involve personal identifiable information, or PII data. By the way, you can find the results of this survey in the Docs tab that you can also see right here on the right. Additionally, from the consumer point of view, according to research by Segment, which is a division of Twilio, they found that 60% of consumers say they will likely become repeat buyers after a personalized shopping experience with a retailer. 45% say they're less likely to purchase from a brand after an unpersonalized experience. So it's really clear to see that shoppers want and expect personalization these days, and why it's a top priority for online businesses to deliver just that. But at the same time, shoppers are becoming more aware of how their data is being used and are demanding high levels of data protection. With data savvy and privacy sensitive customers on the rise, Google phasing out third-party cookies in 2024, iOS updates and global privacy regulations such as GDPR and the California Consumer Privacy Act, or CCPA, it's time to say goodbye to relying on PII data and third-party data for our marketing efforts. So how do we overcome the challenges ahead and embrace cookieless e-commerce to provide personalized journeys that our shoppers want and expect to get? So today we'll talk about just that. And to answer this question and much, much more, I'm happy to introduce our panel of experts. First up, it's Paula Beckel, Director of Retail and Consumer Goods at Microsoft. Paula is a 20-plus year retail industry veteran and currently the Director of Retail and Consumer Goods with Microsoft. Paula developed her deep retail industry knowledge through work experience at Target, where she spent almost 10 years at several leadership positions that spanned e-commerce, marketing, merchandising, and operations. Thank you for joining us, Paula. We'd also like to welcome Gilad Zuberi, Executive Vice President, Global Business Development and Partnership at Content Square. With over 15 years of leadership experience in various work environments, Gilad brings extensive business, digital sales, partnerships, and business development experience in the digital marketing technology industry, working with Fortune 1000 clients. Thank you for joining us, Gilad. And finally, Tal Rotman, Vice President of Global Partnerships and Alliances right here at Namogu. Tal's career spans 3 continents and a multitude of roles. Tal has built a global partnership ecosystem for the last 5 years at Namogu. Tal's team works together with Microsoft as well as solutions and technology partners such as Content Square to improve online customer journeys across the digital landscape. Welcome, Tal, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. So let's dive right in. The first question we have, just to set the table, is e-commerce businesses have been relying on cookies that collect data to personalize shopping experiences on their websites and run effective marketing and advertising campaigns. But with Google phasing out cookies by 2024 and Apple's latest iOS framework updates, how will a cookieless e-commerce ecosystem impact online brands? Tal, do you want to get us started?
Sure thing. So, this is obviously the $1 million question. The cookie monster is coming to eat all of the retailers' cookies, and it's really top of mind for everyone, right? How are we going to deal with some of the changes? What's going on these days in terms of Facebook advertising, iOS changes relating to privacy, and what's interesting, the hype and the some of the fear that's surrounding this issue is particularly for me interesting, given that the problem already exists today, right? Actually, if you think about it, approximately 3/4 of the visitors to any e-commerce website are already cookieless because we don't know who they are, right? They're actually visitors who've come in and they're not logged in. They're not a known first-party visitor. And if you think about it, 75% of your visitors are actually are in that situation today. So truly, when we think about this problem, we really just need to think about it as a scale issue, right? What already exists today is going to just increase, right? And so the question is, what is your strategy? And what are you doing today for those visitors that haven't logged in, that you don't know who they are? Right. And what is the strategy for providing them an optimal and personal experience in their e-commerce journey?
Makes a lot of sense. Gilad, what do you think?
So, like Tal said, we actually at Content Square started about 2 years ago working on our cookieless solution. And we started doing that because we understood that this is where the world is heading. We understood that a lot of our visitors are already on unknown visitors. And Content Square in general takes the approach of not collecting personal identifiable information and blocking it at the source. So we knew that this is where the world is heading. And honestly, today, a lot of visitors, whether because they block it, whether because we can't track for different and various reasons, they are already unknown visitors, and we are already living in a way in a cookieless environment. So the question is, like Tal said, how do we prepare for the next stage in this market? And the answer is we probably already started the process.
So we're already deep into the cookieless world, right? Paula, what do you think?
Yeah, listening to both Tal and Gilad, from a retailer's perspective, and putting myself back in my days at Target, we already had a lot of responsibility around understanding what our data practices were from that marketing perspective. And that I'm talking about that from that perspective of there was never a shortage of data. We always had plenty of data, but we didn't necessarily know how to use it. And so to the point that Tal was making about, we're already marketing to a large percentage of traffic coming in that you can't identify, but you're getting smarter and smarter about what things to personalize and that type of thing. So from my perspective, when I listen to this, one, Gilad said this, there's innovation, there's technology that's going to be coming. So I feel like that should give the marketers on the call at least some breathing room to think, okay, there's going to be innovation coming. But before you know exactly what that is, I would definitely explore what your current data practices are. How much first-party data are you leveraging? And how are you currently scaling your personalization so that you're ready to pivot and really take advantage of the things that will be coming to help with that, because the innovation is going to continue in this space, and the consumer is going to continue to expect personalization at a very relevant way, and that's the piece I think we're going to get to. So it is concerning, but I feel like there will be solutions, specifically what we are kind of going to talk about today.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, I mean, one of the other things that we really need to be considering is that regulatory frameworks are not going to become less restrictive, right? They're only going to become more restrictive. I personally had my first, CCPA call out. So, I'm used to going to websites where there's a GDPR call out of which cookies I'm willing to share, which data I'm willing to share. And, there's a lot of people are familiar now with that choice that they have, in particular in Europe, but over here and in other, in the US, shout out to Boston, of course. There's a lot of those same practices that are happening in Europe starting to happen over here. And like I said, I had my first CCPA modal, which was quite surprising, and also had to make selections about which personal information I'm sharing. So this exists today. Marketers are already dealing with this problem. And it's really, as Paula said, it's really about what are other data sources that you can leverage to provide a different form of personal experience.
Totally. Thanks, everybody. Really, really great insights. Any way you look at it, it sounds like online brands, if they haven't already started, need to start preparing for a cookieless present and future, and find ways to drive insights, even about first-timer and anonymous users, who, as Todd said, are already at least 3/4 of your visitors. So to my next question, how can online brands prepare and shift from relying on third-party data to embracing tactics that meet the new data collection standards? Gilad, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so to connect to the things that Tal and Paula said just now, I think we're entering a new era, and we're flooded with data. And a lot of people are very much used to the data that they have today and the way they leverage it and the KPIs and problems that they use to solve it. But I think we need to take a step back for a second and ask ourselves, how do we find that needle in a haystack? And what do we actually need? What data do we actually need? What problems are we trying to solve? What are our use cases? What are our KPIs? And instead of trying to get the same data that we had in the world where data was free and out there and we could track whatever people were doing, and we're entering into a more area that's focused around privacy, which again is the future and is where we're heading. We need to ask ourselves, what do we actually need? What are the use cases? What are we trying to achieve? And then take a step back and say, okay, what do we need to have in order to achieve that? Now, some of it is already there. Some of it already exists. And the other part that doesn't exist will open up a whole new place for innovation by companies like Nemogu, like Microsoft, like Content Square, to come in there and fill these gaps, again, with the privacy first mindset.
Yeah.
And Paul, what do you?
Yeah, I was going to say, there are, and to riff off of what Gilad was saying, there are new use cases coming. Paul is right. Innovation is, coming down the pike. We're seeing that there are different ways to provide an experience that is personal for the visitors. And some of those different signals that don't have to be personal, by the way, right? Those signals that we see when you're in an e-commerce journey, such as technology that's running inside the browser, right? What is the interaction of the visitor with that technology? Or some other factors like, how are they interacting with different parts of the designed experience? Finding ways to segment visitors based on their journey using machine learning to identify and segment those visitors. And, the classic, put them into the window shoppers versus, shoppers who are actively in purchase mode, right? There's many different ways that we can leverage our data, use technology to find ways to put our visitors into a particularly relevant designed experience, so that they actually get the best experience for them. And it doesn't have to be because we know what their address is, right? That actually, when we think about it, is only just one and a very specific data point. There's so much information out there that isn't based on the personal that we can actually leverage to give a better customer experience.
Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to play off of what Tal said, because there is so much data out there. And in addition to the data that Tal's referring to, don't underestimate or don't forget to really understand where you're currently at today with understanding your first party data that you have. So there's ways for you to continue to think forward on this future cookieless world and making sure that you've taken action for that percent of traffic that's coming in that's already identified. Make sure that those data practices are ready and set to scale, along with the other data sources that Tal and Gillette are referencing. And what I mean by that is how scalable, how mature are you on your first party data collection and usage? And how quickly can you scale it out? And if you're a global operation, which I love, we're seeing so many people across the globe listening in on this one. Have you or are you positioned to manage your data at scale across all your geographies, across all your business units? Because those are things that are going to allow you to really create still personal experiences when you can augment and bring in other data signals from third party outside of like a cookieless environment. And the point I'll make on this one too is that even today, when you think about the tactics that you're doing, are you investing in other capabilities? A/B testing is one that has been around for a long time. And how good are you at using that piece of that thing? So there are other ways to get to that personal experience without only hyper-focusing on that cookie position today. So I love the examples that both you guys are throwing out, because I feel like it's time to truly assess from that retailer, or if you're a CPG company, your current state for your data today, and what things should you be investing in now to get prepared for this coming in 2024, which seems far away, but it's really not.
Yeah, it's less than a year and a half away, right? So yeah, it sounds like there's already some great alternatives out there to cookie-based data, whether it's using anonymized data, deep diving into your own data, rethinking existing KPIs and use cases. So now that we understand some of the alternatives to third-party data, what are some ways brands can apply the cookieless marketing tactics to both on-site and off-site personalization?
So Nadav, I'll jump in. So Nadav, Namogu has and is exploring a variety of unique data points, and working together both with Microsoft and with Content Square to leverage those different data points to build out opportunities for improving the customer experience, improving conversion, and they're really, really interesting and unique data points that I'm pretty excited about as a technophile, on how we leverage this without actually invading people's privacy. Right. For me, one of the really interesting and exciting ones is revolves around something that's quite unique called dark mode. For those who aren't familiar, when you use your browser, you can actually change the mode in order to have it a little bit more a darker color set, right? That is more suitable for originally intended for more suitable for people who are working in the dark or working at night and that sort of experience. These days, and not to throw anybody who is using dark mode, a bad experience. But, I like to say maybe it's like a moody teenager who's using that, late at night, or a gamer or something like that. But truly what was surprising to me was that it's actually widely used. One of our customers that we recently deployed this on, we actually found that 35% of visitors were using dark mode when we measured, across approximately 2 weeks. 35% of visitors were using this. I never use it. And what's really interesting is that the conversion rate between dark mode and light mode was huge. It was over 70%. Was actually at 70% more in light mode than dark mode. So that means that somebody somewhere, a good chunk of those third of visitors, are having a experience that doesn't lead them to actually convert at the end. And therefore, there's something that's in that experience that isn't fitting what they're looking for in terms of a journey. Right now, what is it? That's still to be determined, right? Is it something that, depending on each site, is there something that the color scheme is interfering with the design? It could be something as simple as that. Or is a button, not appearing in the right place, or not appearing within, doesn't pop enough, right? In terms of the being able to identify where is the place that I convert, right? It could be something as simple as that, but there could be other psychological elements to it, right? If people are using it late at night, then maybe there's something about, window shopping late at night and, not being ready to convert. And then maybe there's an experience there that can be modified. There's so many different ways to look at this one single little data point and say, how can we leverage the experience for a third of the visitors to actually improve their experience? There are so many other different ways that technology is being used in the browser, that we really need to think about, like, what are these experiences doing for visitors, right? And does it fit their needs?
Yeah, can I add on to that, Tal? Just talking about from that dark mode and experience. because the experience that you're bringing, personalized, absolutely, but that overall experience has to be one that can help you drive conversion. So when you talk about dark mode, make sure as you think about that as one of the tactics we're discussing, like what is the implications for your accessibility visitors, and making sure like you're doing all of the right user interface testing and making sure that that experience is really on point. Because what you don't want to do is lead too far into that and find that you're creating another experience problem or roadblock for a visitor. So I feel like these are things that it is a trial and learn opportunity, and that's a great example to call out. Provided you also think holistically about your visitors and make sure accessibility is top of mind.
And about that, the ability to tap into these customer segments that we weren't able to tap into in the past, in creating the personalized experience for them is something that we haven't been able to do before. The experience sometimes needs to be tailored in a very, very different way. So if you have people on dark mode versus not dark mode, is your website supporting? Is the application you use supporting? You have different experience in different browsers with dark mode. By identifying that, you can actually do personalized and customized experience, not based on any personal information, like this type of
I think we're having a little bit of connectivity issues on Gilad's side, but so we missed a little bit of that. But thanks everybody for your insights on that. My next question we actually received from one of our registrants, and I think it's on everyone's mind when it comes to personalization. How can brands address personalization while minimizing what's been called the creepiness factor, not feeling invasive to the customers? What do you guys think about that point?
I'll jump in on this one. So while I am very passionate about every interaction, being in retail for a really long time, it's really important for me, and I'm constantly assessing my retail experiences, how personalized they are. And that factor is a big thing that brings me back and makes me become your loyal customer, which is ultimately another big play in this space. Let's not forget those loyal customers that you continue to really serve in this space, but the creepiness factor is real. And it really does need to be something that is top of mind for every retailer as you gather lots and lots of data points. What's the line you cross in using it in a way that does truly become creepy? And so the first point I want to kind of call out is as you're thinking about your personalization strategies, data integrity is key. If your data is faulty at any point, that personalized experience can quickly become a fail and or a creepy factor. I'll use an example of an email that I just received recently, and it was a newer retail I was shopping online and just seeing things out. And somehow they sent my hi, not Paula, hi, my last name. And I was like, yeah, we're not on a last name basis. I'm not quite sure I'm on a first name basis with you, but it was quickly a fail. And that's a data integrity problem. That was probably a feed in. And I'll use this example. Perhaps I opted in and led with that, but have some things in there to make sure your data is cleansed so you're not doing that. So that's one thing. The other point I want to make about this from a creepiness factor, especially crossing the line, personalization strategies are not a set and forget. You can't mine data and then deploy and then start to like scale out in a mass way and not continue to monitor and make sure that personalization of messaging is really hitting the target from a conversion perspective. So it's an investment you have to make. It's an investment in both the technology and your people and your processes. And investing in that is a good way to make sure like you're getting the results that you are looking for from a conversion and sales. But also it's another great way for you guys to really monitor the results that you're getting and make sure that you are not alienating customers by really crossing over into that creepiness factor. Like I used a pretty benign example, but there are other cases where I was like, wow, I literally just looked at that and you popped in super fast into my thing. So you got to balance that. There's a speed element too. So I'll pause and let my peers join in on that.
I was going to say, I totally agree with you with regards to experimentation, right? if you don't, the experiment is only as good as the work that you put in after to analyze the results and validate that, your experiment actually brought value, right? Did it do what you intended to achieve, or what are the findings that you take from that and then run your next experiment, right? That's what's, really exciting about this. As every challenge is an opportunity. In this case, I agree here too, right? This is an opportunity to find new ways to provide a personalized experience. And I often, I see, Netflix as, the gold standard of personalization, because so many people are used to that personalized experience. They know that when you go in and you get the, your menu and your preferences look different every time you go in. And that's because you've actually provided the information to create that personal experience. It's ingrained and it's intrinsic to the Netflix customer design, right? The designed experience. Customers are used to that. They're wanting that. They know that that's going to be there. So there's no creepiness at all, right? Even though we know that they're tracking our viewing patterns and which baking shows I might like, right? But the fact that they're doing that is great. For me, it's actually providing value, and I know that it is. So it's a really strong example of how to do that in a way that isn't creepy.
And can you guys hear me now? Is my microphone okay?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. So I just wanted to say to you guys said, and especially about the creepiness impact, I think sometimes as marketers, as salespeople, as corporations, we forget that the interest is to create better experiences or more human experiences for everyone. And when we're not thinking about the end customer, when we're not thinking about the person that we're tailoring the experience for, we're just thinking about how we reach more people, how we hit our KPIs, then we are crossing the creepiness line by default. And Tal, to your Netflix example, right? I enjoy the Netflix experience because it serves me. I get benefit from it. If I don't get benefit from it, if someone uses my last name, and Paul, I tried to think about it. Do I enjoy getting an email saying, hey, and then insert name here? No, I do not. In the same way, I wouldn't want someone to put my last name in an email to get too creepy with my data. However, I would like a company to recommend similar products or real similar products to what I'm usually looking for, without it getting too invasive and too in my face. So I think the way to look at it as marketers is what is beneficial for our end customers. If we do that, we'll by default also hit our KPIs.
Agreed. So I think we can all agree that while personalization is key, it can definitely be a double-edged sword if it's not used properly, right? And creates the creepy factor, right? So it's super important to, like Gilad said, remember to remain human and think about the humans on the other side and avoid the creepy factor pitfall, right? So the next question we have is about machine learning applications and how we can use them to drive insights and predictions. Does anybody have any insights on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. And we've been definitely hyper-focused a lot on that overall, online experience, because that's what we're talking about. But using the data that you're collecting and thinking about that from what the consumer is doing online, and then thinking about the data that you have in holistic view of your consumer, I want to call out, and there's a lot of things that Microsoft does incredibly well in this space, about making sure that you're leveraging machine learning for both that predictions and insights around the overall experience. Online, in-store, use it to leverage your assortments, your planning. What are the capabilities? What are the experiences that the customer wants both online and in-store? And those are examples of how you really power the data that you're collecting. And so for me, it's about, when I think about it from Microsoft's perspective, it's not only about collecting the data and thinking about that one thread with the data. You've got to apply machine learning capabilities to it to really do that forward view of how you're going to market. What are your assortments you're going to bring forward, and all of those pieces. So for us, it is an expectation that you want to have some capability specifically around that machine learning to make sure that you're really forward looking at the experiences for the consumer and not just applying what's right there in the moment. Like the ability, Netflix is the best example, not to hyper focus on this, but I think about when I'm looking for something to just unwind and watch. And the fact that I know when they give me my % rating of like, this is probably going to fall with this range that you're going to like, it has gotten so spot on that it's very reliable. And so that's a great analogy to play off of what you're saying for Netflix, is that they have to get it right. The consumer wants you to get it right. And then I'm more likely to lean in on them from an overall, like, what am I going to watch tonight? The same thing with just understanding what are the recommendations. Don't send me something I already bought. Use machine learning, use that to really send me something else that would be a nice complement to what I bought. That's super frustrating. I was like, great, I don't need 2 of those. I need the items that go with it. And so that's another great example of really leveraging that machine learning to make sure your recommendations are spot on.
But one way that
and the end user. Oh, sorry, Todd.
No, you go.
The end users are not very giving around that, right? Because if you get it right, they expect you to get it right. That's the bare minimum that you can do. If you get it wrong, you will get all their fury of how bad of a work you're doing, and this is not at all what I'm looking at, and I don't even want to watch this. So it's a very, very difficult game to play and a very difficult one to get right. And very few companies in the market actually put the effort in to get it right. Sometimes it's better not to do it at all if you're not going to do it right.
Totally agree. And what's interesting is, for example, we're leveraging machine learning to take all these different factors and make predictions as well, right? In the case of Nemogu, we're predicting on intent. We can actually take all these different things that are technology, journey, site, different parameters, and identify and factor in, similar sites, similar subverticals, and then actually make a prediction, right? And say, this visitor has high intent to purchase. This has a high probability to exit. And you can take all this data points to actually make decisions that then you can leverage to provide an experience that's relevant for that visitor. Does that visitor has very high intent to purchase? Let's accelerate to checkout, right? Without it necessarily feeling creepy, right? Because you're not actually saying, would you like to, or I know this about you, but you're rather just providing them a fast forward, right? That is probably, if the machine learning is, the algorithms are right, is probably what they're looking for in the first place. A different kind of way of leveraging that kind of experience for a visitor, where you have information, that right now the standard experience isn't the right one. We another very exciting data point that we were leveraging is their network strength or their CPU availability, right? If they're using an old phone, or they're like me, where they've got like a million browser tabs open, right, and the CPU's kind of creaking along. Maybe that heavy checkout experience with lots of different technology running on it is actually going to make the experience poor, right? The page load obviously has relation to conversion rate. People want a very clean experience. So we actually have worked with one of our very large enterprise customers here in the US to actually design a light checkout for customers who are going to have that experience, right? If they have poor network strength, if I'm out in the sticks with my phone and I just need to get something quick for my kids, right? And I'm going to do it now because I'll forget later, right? So for them, you might want a light checkout experience, right? And just at that moment for that visitor at that time. And that's a personal experience that, provides value, to Gilad's point earlier, right? Provides value to them, that they don't feel, that Big Brother's watching, but they actually got value out of that personal experience.
Ooh, I love that example. Can I just add on one thought to that? In the past, thinking back to my days when I was in the retailer seat versus my current role in Microsoft, we used to sometimes jump to we know this much data at this point, let's just hit with a promo. That can help your conversion, but it doesn't necessarily help your bottom line. And to the point Tal was making, I was giving you signals I was ready to buy, but I just needed to check out quickly. Time was a factor for me. Convenience was a factor for me. I needed more product information. So being able to unpack those different scenarios and create experiences that are truly personalized to get the consumer quickly where they are is a great way to drive conversion without necessarily using only one strategy like a promo or something. So I think those are great things to explore, learn, test out, and really start to understand consumer behaviors when you offer up those type of personalized experiences.
And to that example exactly about network speed, because I love that topic. 7.5 years ago, we started doing business in Japan. And I remember one of the first things we've noticed is that their websites, in general, the standard e-commerce websites in Japan are very, very long and very, very heavy, all have lazy loads. We prepared a report for them, and we met the customer and we said, well, you can increase your conversion rate if you just shorten the site and make it a bit lighter. And they looked at us and said, we don't have network strength issues here in Japan. Your probably highest bandwidth is our lowest. So it's a non-issue. Without understanding the culture of buying and the infrastructure in the place, you can't apply this and say all visitors in the regular marketing segmentation. You need to take geolocation. You need to take buying habits into consideration when you look at this. So again, it's a lot of segmentation that we can do in a very anonymized way.
Really interesting conversation, guys. Thanks for that. So maybe going back a little bit and hitting on the idea of all the new regulations that are coming out or have come out in the last few years. How can brands make sure or can secure their website from PII and third-party services? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So just to maybe put to sharpen up that question, I'd say that there's a lot of technology that's running in browser today, right? And many solutions, as well as Nemogu's and Content Square's, is deployed via those kinds of technologies that are on the website and run inside the browser. And there's a history. A lot of companies, that have been running for a long time online have a certain amount of a technology debt of software that's actually running inside the browser that maybe the marketing team doesn't even know about, right? They're just kind of lazily lying there, potentially even slowing things down as well. Maybe it doesn't matter in Japan, but in some countries it does. But all these different technologies are SaaS solutions, and they can change, right? Different kinds of scenarios, right? There might be some edge cases if a visitor goes to a certain part of the site, and with that technology might actually have a particular bug. It might expose PII data unintentionally, right? Actually expose it, maybe in the clear, maybe not, maybe in certain parts of the site, be it in a cookie or be it in even in the URL. Those different technologies are potentially exposing it, and in real time in different scenarios. So every visitor could have a different kind of PII exposure, and it's something that technology vendors, of course, they need to be on top of it. But the technology vendors are also using other technologies. A third-party tag or third-party solution that you're using is also calling other technologies, right? Within their software, and so it becomes a very difficult web to track. And of course, Nemogu and Content Square can help with that, right? We can actually help visitors identify what's going on in terms of the technologies that are running there. We actually can provide alerting and reporting around that, and it's also a very exciting part of our customer journey OS technology that we're bringing to market.
And I think that it's very important for these brands to work with vendors who are privacy first. Don't take risks there. We actually took the approach, both in ClickTail, which is my former employer, and Content Square, which is my current employer, that we don't collect PII. We don't collect it and delete it. We just block it in the source. That way, when you do it that way, you can never collect it. And if there is an accident somewhere, it's blocked there and it just can't flow through. Because it's enough to have one mistake to lose trust with your visitors, with your customers, to probably break a few laws. So don't take the risk, and don't work with vendors who don't provide you a foolproof solution from collecting PII.
Yeah, and I'm going to add on to this really from Microsoft's perspective. We are very passionate about the security and trust that we operate for the technologies we provide, and with the partners, great partnerships like we have with Nemogu and Content Square. But ultimately, I also want to get back to then how do you really do this? You have technology as one lever, but being compliant is required. So make sure as you think through these, what are your appropriate disclosures to your customers? Making sure you're transparent on that, and you've adopted ways to not only make sure that it's readily available, but you're also, to Tal's point, you've got interactive, proactive measurements. You have ways to really track and understand what you're doing. So my only call out on this one too is do all of the right things up front to plan and protect your consumers, your customers, but make sure you also have the processes in place to address if there are issues, because that's equally important to your speed, to how you respond. Goal is to make sure it doesn't happen, but then also make sure like you are prepared, and then you can address it and figure out what are the right technology and processes in place to make sure that you are protecting your customers.
Awesome. Well, I wanna address some of the questions that we got from our audience here and elsewhere. So the first question we got right here in the chat is a question about dark mode, which seemed to garner a lot of interest. So Sean asks us, are the demographics of dark mode and standard different?
Okay, since I raised it, I'll jump in. Hi, Sean. Thank you for your question. So the answer is, honestly, we don't know, right? Because Nemogu doesn't collect personal data. So we don't know, if that visitor is 18 to 24. I can certainly say that, the two visitors that are sitting in the room at, late at night playing Minecraft are definitely in that younger bracket, and definitely using dark mode. And that's my vision of what it is. But honestly, to Paula's earlier comment, there's questions of accessibility, right? There's questions of time of day. A lot of people, and that part of the settings actually can set it up to change into dark mode at a certain time of day, right? And so I think that it's a super interesting question for me personally. I'd love to dig in and find out what are some of the reasons, what's some of the psychology behind it. And one of the things we are doing is where we do have personal data on the customer level, we can actually provide that indicator, that signal of a dark mode, and then our customers can marry that with demographic data that they already have for those sessions, right? And then do that analysis to try to find out, and something that we are actually working with some of our customers on. So stay tuned, and maybe we'll put out some reports on dark mode psychology.
Any other thoughts around this?
I would also love to know, but again, we don't tap into this information. So probably consulting firms and the McKinseys of the world will be able to shed some light. But back to the privacy point that we just made in the last segment, we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So we'll move to some questions we got from the registration process. So one question we got is, can personalization with non-personal data be more than like placing ads in the right website or in the right environment, like putting ads for soccer on a sports website? Can you think of different examples of personalized tactics using non-personal data?
We're all looking at each other. Who's going to jump in? I'm gonna start this, and then I'm gonna let my two experts from the technology side lean in. So there is still a lot of information, understanding you can take, even though it's non-personal data, but there are behaviors, thinking about segments and things that you can still create an experience that feels very personalized without necessarily getting all the way into that PII data. And those are tactics that a lot of marketers are using today, both across websites, in ad placements, and those types of things. And I feel like that is something that you have to understand what data pieces you're collecting that are in that non-personal bucket, but that can give you enough of a sense of your different ways to engage either segments or audiences that can still give a feeling of personalized. So that's top of mind. That's what came to mind for me with that question.
So to Paula's point, there is a lot of, at Content Square, we collect experiences, and we collect them in a way that is fully anonymized, meaning we don't collect any of that data to begin with. So all of the experience that we're collecting is those segments that you want to use here for personalization. There's a lot that you can get from there. It can start from more technical things like network speed, the CPU that you're using, that, by the way, we collect from the Nemogu data, and are able to segment our behavioral data based on that. But we can actually give them experiences without knowing who they are, but just based on their digital body language. We know how to read it, we know how to segment it, and then we can use these segments to power third-party tools for personalization and provide really a more human experience, and more experience that fits the audiences that we're looking into. But instead of categorizing them as male or female between the ages of 25 to 35, we can categorize them based on their digital body language and their behaviors on our digital properties.
Yeah.
I love the terminology, digital body language, Gilad. I think it's great. It really indicates, what is the kind of behaviors that are happening online, right? And that's really a way to think about, visitors and shoppers in an e-commerce experience, right? It doesn't have to be, I go back to the address, right? But it doesn't have to be personal, right? To be able to identify, you don't need to know the person's name to identify, what their current feeling is about their experience. I mentioned a number of different data points that we're collecting, and they mostly revolve around different elements and interactions with the browser. One of the most exciting ones for me personally is around what's a relatively new phenomena in terms of shopping extensions, right? If we think about things like Amazon Assistant or Honey, PayPal, which purchased Honey, Rakuten, Ebates, Capital One Shopping, Klarna bought Piggy, right? There's a lot of these different technologies that are becoming very, very prevalent and very important part of the customer's experience that actually isn't part of the design. It's external, it's happening outside, but they can provide us a lot of really interesting indicators for what the visitor is intending, what they want to try to do, right? They're out there looking for coupons or cashback and that sort of thing, and it's a great indicator of what the visitor's mindset is at that particular moment, right? It's a really, really interesting technology. And something that we are noodling on as a company to provide that kind of data to retailers so that they know, okay, these coupons are out there in the wild. Maybe we need to get a little bit more control on our coupons, or these are the coupons we want, to be presented at this given moment. So let's make sure that we've got those out there in the field.
Okay, so we're almost out of time, but I think we can wrap up with the last audience question that we got here from Melinda, who's asking whether we see increased conversion in dark mode experience in the data that we've been looking at. So I wonder if we have some insights around that, and then after that we can, I think, wrap it up.
I can jump right in. Yeah, actually, what we're seeing is light mode converts much more than dark mode, right? That's what we're seeing at the moment. And in the one example I gave, it was something like more than 70% difference. So more than 70% relative between dark mode and light mode in terms of conversion. Light mode converted more than 70% more than dark mode. Why is the big question, right? What is the experience? That's where, as Gilad said, right, the big consulting firms might be able to devise psychology, but we can really take those visitors, segment them, look at maybe what time of day, and maybe marry that data with demographic data, and then do some experimentation. It really is about, to Paula's earlier point, taking data, coming up with hypotheses, experimenting against that hypotheses, and iterating, right? And so that you can actually identify what are the reasons for this happening, and then let's see what we can do to improve the experience for this segment of visitors so that they have a better path to purchase.
And this is why I love the partnership with Nemogu, because we can take the dark modes and the light modes, and we can actually measure the experience on both of them and try to give you a better understanding of how are these people behaving, not just how they're converting, but what are they interacting with in the website, why maybe they're not converting as well. I don't need to know anything about them except for look in an aggregated way on how they're behaving, the two segment groups there. So that segment, that data point for us is gold, and we're able to provide through our partners' services, leveraging our data, a more holistic view to answer that question.
But thank you for the great question, Melinda.
Definitely. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our audience for the great questions, and especially thank you to our speakers for all these amazing insights and bringing your experience to bear. We had a great time. Just a reminder to everyone that this has all been recorded, and we'll be sharing that recording with you early next week. And thanks again and for joining us, and have a great rest of your week. Thanks, everybody.